focusing on the light spurs. And one of the reasons why e6 is so good for us to see in general is because in the Stonewall, a lot of the critical lines involve like an early bishop g4 or early bishop f5, and because it controls light spurs, especially if we commit to an early f4. There's some cases we prefer not to, like we want to play bishop d3, knight d2, so that they commit first or something. But if they play very accurately, they avoid committing, they get this early knight c6 in and prevent d5. We either have to commit to a call with play f3 or just play f4 and allow bishop f4.
We'll have to see. I mean, again, it's really each move with almost time. But bishop comes out, and then it's gonna depend. It's very important move order.
Yeah, we played f4 here, then bishop f5 is annoying us. Now, after bishop d3, we go back to our position if they take us, but they don't have to. Like maybe e6 is kind of annoying.
Again, before playing pawns on dark, we're going to try and get harmony on light. So while the pawns on dark are important, we're not going to do that too early usually.
Pawns on dark are to support possible weaknesses so that we can eventually attack on light. So if we compromise light too early, then we defeat the whole point. So let's go to some variations, if you could call it that. This is more of a structure than variations, so like let's say b6.
b6 is trying to get the bishop down, and it's, again, the usual move would be knight to d2 here, but if we do that, the bishop comes to b7. If we maybe just show that for a moment.
Yeah.
And then we want to play f4, but we can't, we lose g2. If we block with knight f3 and we protect the g-pawn, the problem is we never do get f4. So it's a little hokey-pokey, and it gets the monkey wrench in our concept.
This is playable, but we want to get our typical structures so that we can apply similar middle game ideas and get some space. So after f4...
So after b6, we just go back and move. After b6, we play f4 first, just to make sure to get our knight there in time. The move order, right? So maybe...
Okay. This is kind of interesting because right now they actually have more control over the e4 spur than we do.
Now we have knight f3, we get our structure, And he has e4, but
we can fight for it also. And so let's say c5, c3, g6 is an example variation. So I'm kind of curious, what about knight e4 here? Let's say this, and then...
Again, he's trying to jump in the hole. Maybe allows you to say why d4 in the hole. What is that?
d4 is like a weak square. It's we weakened it by playing d4 and
no pawns to protect it. That's what. On the one hand, the Stonewall is so strong and dark. On the other hand, you have peace on light, but there is a hole. I would say the two most important squares in the Stonewall are e4 and e5. e5, I'm going to just put a square, show the squares.
e5
and e4. E5 is going to be our outpost for the knight. Our knight's going to get there one day. E4 is a sensitive square, but I believe that actually that's can be a weak square, but if played correctly, it can be a strong square. And that's actually the Stonewall. After years and years of thinking about it and variations and developing ideas and lines, E4 is the key to the Stonewall, to putting proper. And sometimes we'll see we push E4, we push the pawn.
Right, because they didn't blockade us enough, like they didn't put a pawn on D5 or
again, his lines.
Yeah, we'll see those lines.
So if he does this, I mean, if he tries to hop in, I think he's doing an early retake. Just so we just go back and move, we can't take it to knight, maybe we show it. If knight takes knight, we can show it.
Sure.
Knight takes knight, pawn takes, and that's a fork, at least to some problems. So if we go back, we take with the bishop, he takes, then knight g5, and we should win a pawn. We're going to...
Right, here we would just take the e6 pawn, we would go back, and we would have the material.
And I want to address, we go back and move. After knight g5, we play knight g5 now. If the students should know that, again, the pawns aren't dark, but the energy, even though we lost the light split bishop, the energy of the pieces is on light, is focusing on e4 is light, and e6 light, and even queen h5. The queen could sometimes, we show the queen coming out to h5 in some cases. Could be nice, again, on light. So there's that energy seeping in the pawns. Again, I think with this idea and mentality, a student could be a chance to be creative, try things, follow sometimes the lines here, also try things of your own and get groovy with the colors and in this Stonewall and in whatever other openings you feel like playing. and positions, middle games and end games. So it's just a good exploration, and we wanted this to be to help the student to think of these color ideas whenever we play.
Sure, so black is not actually in time to go knight e4, and if he plays d5, we're back in the usual Stonewall lines, but this bishop is out of place, and ideas like bishop d5 and knight e5 might exist, or just like this is really slow. So if they can't punish us, then we got our space as we wanted. So let's say they try to play against our setup. They play like d6 for instance, they're like, well, you're not getting knight e5, well then we have a space advantage, and we are at some point able to push d4. So this is just working for us. We might push e5 at some point, we get easy development with castles kingside, something like, for
You see
example,
the line having, we'll see you later maybe. Castles, goody castles.
sure, and the general idea is we can push e5 at some point, we can also develop first, maybe knight e4 is coming.
Yeah, we can see it through. Castle goes back.
Yeah, sure, let's say they castle, e5.
E5, so basically what E5 is really doing, if you go back a sec, E5 is really doing is saying you're not going to give me the knight outpost, I'm going to demand it with a pawn. And I remember when I had this, my first game I had was, developed it was back in the Manhattan Chess Club in the late 90s, 99 I think. And it was game 30 I believe against Gregory Berlovsky. He was a very strong player, 2400. I think I was around 2200 at the time, and I thought about it a little while, and I was like, d6, there's no e5, there's no knight e5, and I came up with this idea, and it was, I had a nice win there. It was kind of inspired me to look deeper into this slide. So yeah, e5, and then he could take, or if he takes, you always take with the f1. I think that's something important to actually talk about. You want to open up the f file if you can. It also opens up the dark bishop, right? It opens up, you know, we talk about dark bishop being passive, but it can often activate with the right motivation, so that's good. Then the knight comes out to d5, knight e4 is important.
Yeah, there's big attacking chances here.
Yeah.
All of our pieces are coming to the king side. Our bishops are flowing, we have a space advantage. Black is, I wouldn't be surprised if black was close to losing objectively.
Yeah, like rook c8, show people rook c8, and then, again, there's a move I like, a3 here. There's a move I like is a3.
Oh, that's so typical, isn't it? Because black's only chance for counterplay is to try to open the file and harass our bishop, but now he can't. And then he's like, well, you can't even go here. So it's like, well, we could do all those attacking ideas, or we can sort of chill and do that too. Then all the pieces will flow in, and they're going to get checkmated in a few minutes.
Absolutely, the knight cannot be 21, and again, the pawns on dark, even a3, a little brick, a dark brick, and allowing the pieces to kind of flow properly.
Here, all of our moves make sense, but when I was thinking back to a lesson me and Yakov had, and he was like, Elijah, you don't always need to know what you're doing, you just need to know that your opponent is doing less than you. And here, we're doing a lot, but if we prevent their only idea, then we get to do a lot without calculating it. Because all our pieces just come in. Oh yeah, that's another thing, it's like, the problem here, Elijah, is that you're calculating. Because
People ask to just build.
well, it's more, in a lot of positions, you prefer to have a simple win, where you don't have to calculate the opponent's counterplay. If calculation implies, here's my idea, here's my opponent's idea, well, what's best is if you have all the ideas and the opponent has none of the ideas.
And we'll take a few more moves. I'll show Queen c7. We can look at it. Queen c7, Queen e1. Queen e1. This is a nice little line here. Let's assume he does nothing. 8a6. Queen g3. It's nice. Queen here. Usually the queen comes out light. Here's a little dark. There's already a threat of bishop h6 using the pin, which is very, very strong. He has to go king h8. Then we go queen h3. Queen h3 is really strong as well, threatening all sorts of mates. Yes, the bishop opens up against h7. There's a lot of things happening there. So we just show one line if he moves pawn h6. You can simply sack. And then we made him.
There's got to be a lot of ways you can do it.
Is probably straightforward. Okay, so yeah, this is very typical. Again, so when they play d6, we aim to play e45. We'll have some games, illustrative games in this, but again, this is a general idea
Right, and at this point, like, as always with this course, we're not aiming to show you need to memorize this or that line. The more important thing is, in this pawn structure, here are the ideal squares. This is what we're aiming for. Here's the color harmony. Here's what the opponent's idea is. If you get this typical setup, here is a tip showing various middle game ideas. Like, do you have to play this exact line at this point? Well, no, you just have a big center for free and a nice attack. But it's nice to show what the ideas are, because in the same pawn structure, the pawn structures are where the ideas in chess are organized. The pieces are the main, the pawns support the pieces, and that makes the ideal squares and weaknesses clear. So that makes sense to show things this way. I really like A3 as well. So going back, maybe they won't let you play E5, or maybe you won't get this position, but it's like just to show the ideas. Let's say they play E5 and prevent you. Then it's like,
and if he'll take back. And now at this point, it's actually important to look what this is a tricky position. Because we can win a pawn. If pawn takes pawn, let's say pawn takes pawn.
that's not a big deal.
No, the problem is that, and that looks good, but the problem is that knight hops in, and also hops in to get the pawn back, and then black is good. We can actually play queen e2. Knight takes pawn.
Knight takes pawn like this knight.
Yeah, then knight takes, and then this is good for black, because black has a very comfortable center as knight's well posted.
Right, white's ahead in development, but white could have done a lot better than this.
Yeah,
and this is an isolated pawn with an outpost for an e5, and I'm not paying attention too much to everything else. It's just more like the idea of this is not something we would prefer to allow. Maybe there's some tactical justification, but position, we're not.
We take once, then we push.
Much simpler. Free pass pawn.
Yes, that's the protected pass pawn. It's a general theme. Take once, then push. Take once, push. That's a good bypass. Take once, bypass. And then D5 is a great structure where we have a protected pass pawn.
We just have better pieces, a protected passer, and the opponent has weaknesses, so the other one line is complicated, this is not, so if they play the bishop e7, the Fianchetto lines like it's Queen's Indian, we play knight e2, we play for e4. If they play an early knight e4, then we take with the bishop and recapture the f-pawn with knight g5, we win the e4 pawn, or the e6 pawn if they protect with e5, and if they don't, we get our center, which will dangerously advance, or if they advance with e5, then taking back the f-pawn and pushing d5 offers us a positional advantage. So the Queen's Indian setup gives white plenty of ideas for advantage.
Yeah, in this case, we might play like this end. We could maybe play pawn to c4. Probably we're going to look to is get our knight to c4. Maybe show that for a moment. Like we could play, let's say, castles. At some point, by knight to c4. Not yet, because maybe, we're attacking the pawn, right? We're attacking the e5, and then a4. A4 is a good way to play to make that outpost. Knight to c4 is better than pawn to c4. The outpost. In some cases, you flip back into e3, and just show the arrows, but you flip back into the f5, and that's could be really nice. And then again, that queen e1, queen g3, we could actually just, queen e3, and we're seeing some dark energy. The dark bishop becomes a hero. But we're seeing the pawns being on white here, and helping some dark energy for the pieces. So, again, you guys get used to this, practice a little bit, and you gotta have fun with it.
Start feeling the colors.
Start feeling some color.
Chess is a colorful game. Add some color to your play,
exactly. Some inspiration, and again, I think the students that have lines, they can feel free to post the questions. I think that's
Of course.
Okay.
So, going back, let's say they play like, after c5, c3, let's say they play g5 instead. Well, now we get the e5 outpost, and so now e5, this is very similar to what we were looking at before. We have ideas like knight d2, queen f3, castles kingside, g4, g5, kingside attack stuff, but also...
95 is a little early, but it's good here.
Because we're doing it early now, because they've already weakened this diagonal, and we're preparing possible attacks.
Yeah, it's good here, but I will say we're gonna have to catch up and make no mistake. We're not trying to like bop them on the head and they're knocking off the board. We need to be humble. Pawns on direct, we're not trying to make them like that. We have to. It's e4 square. We have to be humble and know our place. The e4 is weak. There's no question about it. E4 is weak if not tended to correctly. We're not getting a proper gotcha. We have to play knight d2 very, very soon in castle. Queen f3, and queen f3 again. If we just maybe we should play a few moves out.
Sure, and I just want to be clear, like, 94 is the typical response, it's like F5 is kind of annoying, but here, they've already committed to not only wasting time, it's like, they've possibly weakened their position, bishop b5 check, and they can't even block anymore, king e7's far from ideal. Okay, but, so if they can't go to e4 yet, we have time for knight d2, so something like bishop d6, knight d2, and if they play knight e4, we can always, like, take,
still check.
Bishop b5 check, and this pawn is possibly weak, so we're in time, and if they keep waiting, well,
queen f3 seems alright.
they can't play knight e4 anymore.
Again, queen f3 insect repellent.
Yeah.
On light, we have a light
Extra pawn.
Yeah, you can never jump in because we'll win a pawn, and that queen f3 is helping to get extra insect repellent. We're gonna need that when they feed cattle the bishop to help their make sure on knight e4. I will say, a lot of times around knight e4,
Yes.
you don't have the structure anymore so easily.
They're fighting for light, aren't they? They're fighting for light, but at no point are they actually able to use it because then they have to watch out for the light weaknesses they can.
Very nice, very nice. Bishop e5 is also light, so a lot of light flexibility, yeah. So we're gonna get opportunity with it and use light all over, yeah.
Yeah, so the feed kind of setups are not so challenging. Let's go back for a moment. D6, we're happy to see this, of course. Bishop g3, and okay, let's go back to what's more normal with d5. Of course, we don't want to play f4 yet because they play knight e4 and they cemented f5 themselves. So we play knight d2.
Yeah, knight d2, very humble, very quiet, and helping make sure there's no e4. We do have the ability to do that. We don't have to play f4 yet. f4 is used to stop e5, to clamp down. If we maybe just show f4 clamping down. Yeah, f4 and then clamping down. The f pawn and the d pawn clamp down.
Yes, like if Black already had knight c6 in, he'd be threatening e5, so we'd want to go.
Now we have to do the f and the d pawn clamping down, and he'll never get it. But as long as we don't have it yet, it helps to play knight d2 to again first replenish, to cure the issue before the problem. Knight d2 light, bishop on d3 light, then f4. Okay, now perfect setup. This is the perfect setup.
Yeah, I've heard a pinch of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. c5, and that's tickling the dark. We're gonna try to play c3 too.
Yeah. C3, we talked about this in the intro, keeping it solid, also keeping the c2 square for our bishop if they play c4, knight c6. They're trying to scare us with e5. We're not gonna play some slow move now, so we gotta go with f4. And now they don't have e5 in, and they don't have knight e4 in, so we get our good setup. So if they just play some slow developing setup, we get what we want. We're in time with knight f3, knight e5, we castle kingside, queen f3, g4, g5, and these middle games are very good for us, and I mean, mating attack is pretty likely. So if Black wants to fight back, he needs an early concrete option to interfere with our setup. So bishop d6, knight f3, and Black actually can interfere with our setup now. At club level, he usually doesn't. You check the chess database, but let's say castles kingside. Actually, let's discuss the good option first. C takes d4 is actually really annoying because we almost always want to recapture.
Usually, that's actually really important. But we usually want to take with the pawn. I know that a lot of times the students say, "Oh, take the C pawn." It's not true. You want to take with the E pawn if you can. Because you get the bishop open, you get the dark bishop open little by little.
And also we sort of restricted the knight in c3.
Yeah.
So here's like, well, if we take this way, we're losing the pawn.
You have no choice, you have no choice.
If they play queen c7 instead, sometimes when they take the pawn, we can sacrifice it and get a lot of compensation with castles, but here we just don't have the compensation.
You can't give the pawn.
But here it's like, well, we're okay, but it's not ideal. First of all, they have knight b4 sometimes. If we retreat, they would have like bishop b7, bishop b5. It's a little uncomfortable, so we're maybe going to play a3, but Black is not worse. He's fine. But our ideas also are still interesting. But this is what happens if Black knows what is very accurate. He'll take on d4 early with an attack on the f4 pawn or put bishop f5. But if he doesn't, then our setup makes more than enough sense. You have good play in the middle game.
Yeah, and you know what, C takes the a3 and you're mostly fine. You're mostly normal, back to normal. Again, a3 will be still another variation. You play a3 and you go back to the main line, so it's gonna be mostly
Right, so also, I mean, we would have heard an earlier knight e5 in to prevent this idea, but then they would have got knight e4. So we're fighting to consolidate our setup. Our Stonewall setup has powerful middle game chances if we can keep it. If Black has various ways of fighting it very early, but if he doesn't, then our ideas are very powerful. So let's look at what happens if they don't play this concrete option. 95, and now it's too late. I'm not saying black is losing. I'm saying black is allowed our attacking setup, and now we have the initiative. There's no weakness on F4, there's no way to get a knight on E4, and we're just going to play castles, queen F3, G4, G5, and black is going to have to figure out how not to get checkmated.
We're back on our normal flow. It's nice to have a normal flow, and 95 is not. Again, all things being equal, I will say one thing, which is, I think, on a very practical level. Normally, you do not play 95 too early. When in doubt, castle first and then play 95. The reason is, especially before they castle, if you play 95 early, they get afraid. They won't castle. They'll play differently. It's very, very important. This is especially in slower chess when times like come up to 95. You don't need to signal. You don't need to signal. I'm very practical for years and years I've seen. You try to castle first, let them castle, then you attack him. Here he's castled already first of all. And Carlos 95 has a reason, right? It's a concrete reason. There's such a reason you might. But again, it's just important. This is not even move based, but it's very, very real. Like, people are not used to these lines, and if you scare them, they get scared. If you don't scare them, they're like a turtle in like a hot water.
You gotta boil the frog.
For a frog. And then by the time they realize it's too late, really, it's so interesting how you win, and like they'll play normal lines and be strong, and then suddenly you'll have 18, 1900, sometimes even stronger players losing like effortless, like a baby. And it's incredible to see. It's because they don't realize the danger until it's way too late.
Was it Grandmaster Gregory Serpent or was it a different Grandmaster? I'm not sure. But there was an article on chess.com called The Boiling Frog Attack. It was about the Stonewall. Because they get eased into checkmate.
Yeah.
Just relax. Oh wait, I lost the game. Oh well. Wow. Yeah. I can relax into the next.
Absolutely. Alright, so again, we're all equal. This is something I don't think we covered in course, and it's just something that it's good at a very practical level. It's a good little tidbit of advice.
It's still possibly questionable 2200 plus in slow chess for the Stonewall Attack if you play it as a system against all move orders. There are some ways black can actively fight our system with very accurate play early on, but that's one of the reasons why we don't recommend the Stonewall as a system, and against those accurate tries, we are recommending alternatives. Okay, so let's go back. Like the cheesecake, for example. Okay, so C5, C3, C4, a typical mistake. Oh my goodness, this is so bad. The early computers used to do this too.
Early computers used to play C4, and it helps because now the bishop has the same diagonal hitting the light on H7, but then it gets even safer. Okay.
Because G4 is possible now, and you don't have to worry about the weakness of the G4 pawn. Like let's imagine for a moment that we're trying to play like D4 in some position. Well, takes.
You gotta show.
Alright, I'll just show it here. Like, this is even hard to do. I mean,
waste the move or something.
Obviously I'm playing F4, but like...
The problem is when they have pressure, you're never getting E4, right?
It's like we have...
E4 is a weak pawn.
Weak outpost square. It's playable, but it's maybe not playable with F4. I mean, the weaknesses are too serious.
C5 keeps us honest. That's the when they play C4, you're getting new possibilities. You're probably leaving the tension. You don't want to do that.
This tension was useful. It restricted White's D pawn.
Okay.
So going here, it's like White not only has his typical Stonewall ideas with an attack, he can play E4 both as a standalone, but also in the Stonewall without worrying about this weakness anymore. So let's say White still plays it as a Stonewall. I mean, why not? F3. Oh, we don't even have to worry about that idea anymore. And this structure's not as good as we'd like it to be, but that's not there anymore either. So
very happy. Castle now, we castle again. No 95. Here's a good example. With 95, then they start panicking, and then they have defenses. You take your time. No problem. Take your time. Castle first. Castle rules on castle.
And then they'll make some slow move, and then when you play 95, you already have your rook ready. Like let's say G4, G5, Queen H5. We also have Rook F3, Rook H3 is an idea. And it's like, why go for the ridiculously aggressive stuff right now when you can develop your pieces first, and then you have those ideas in reserve. Then they're like, wait, how do I defend? But oh wait, all your pieces are already in attack. None of their pieces are in the defense because the closed center cuts the board in half.
It's a very comfortable position for White. Okay, so
Alright, so there's, other move orders black can try. E6 is, or no, E6 is probably just as accurate. D5, bishop D3. We don't want to play this because we commit too early. Bishop F5, bishop D3. This is okay. It's okay, but we were aiming for this after black is stuck and doesn't have much counterplay, and so if we want to make it tricky for him to develop his knights for bishop, and it won't always make as much sense. Like, if we play bishop D3 first, you can't play...
Stops price for exactly.
Yeah, like here, for instance, they try to get, like, risky with bishop G4, we have F3, and then
E2 first, but I think
E2, knight F4, and when they go back, we can take him in the bishop pair, and we still have C4 as an idea, maybe Queen B3, we're slightly better. So it's just hard for them to develop that bishop. We want to commit to a Stonewall in a better circuit.
If we go back, actually, bishop G4, F3 is fine, but if we go back, with knight E2 first is actually the way. Knight E2 first, again, it probably will transpose.
It's probably a good habit to develop your pieces all equal.
Also, it doesn't scare. You want to play the quiet move, castle, no need to scare people with it. Quiet. We've seen that at Cheesecake. D2 quiet moves.
We'll scare them when it's too late.
It's too late, exactly. Well, learning front.
Let's not let them calculate the tactics when the tactics are defensible. Let's let them calculate how they're going to lose after we're crushing them.
Yeah, knight E2 first, and get F3 because F3 is very committal. Pawn moves on the knight developing, very happy to develop, and then F3, knight F4, and we can actually see that variation. We're going to look at that.
We're going to see that later in the model game section, and white's a little bit better. Yeah, but if black doesn't play bishop G4, he doesn't play bishop F5, then he's not fighting for light, especially if that diagonal wasn't working. Well, not as effectively as it does. So, and let's say here, D5, bishop D3, and well, we're covering that in a different move order. Let's go to this. So, we were looking at this through the knight F6 move order and looking for independent tries that are, like, if you play the G6, you're going to go into the cheesecake lines. If you play E6, it's not so challenging, the B6 lines are covered, but otherwise, it's probably just the same as G4, G5, and this is the main move order we'll cover it. So G4, G5, E3. We're playing E3 because we don't want to commit to knight F3 or F4 yet. We decide based on whether they fianchetto. So let's say knight F6. Well, no, let's cover that soon. C5, C3, and all of the usual ideas still apply.
I think in general, whenever they play C5, you want to play C3.
Yeah, the Stonewall is more of a structure than a theory opening to memorize. You're more aiming to get a typical position. Okay, so...
Well, C3 just need to rebuild the pawns. It's actually interesting to know if you play bishop D3, instead of C3, it's very easy to flip. It's so easy to make this move, and actually it's a near blunder, because they play knight C6. They play knight C6. Notice how the pawn on D4 is already in danger. Then now you have to play C3.
I'd be tempted by knight F3, because I don't even like C3 because of E5.
E5. And again, he hits us too hard on dark, and we never did get the grip, the pawn.
We never got F4.
We never got the pawn grip, so again, the pawns on dark allow for further opportunities on light.
F4 and D4, I like Stonewall, but it's also the Pillsbury grip.
So C5, I think, is invariable. I don't believe there are really any exceptions.
C5, C3.
And actually, we could throw this in C4. People have asked me, C4, what do you play? Like, C4 is a little annoying. It's actually kind of, because it blocks the bishop on D3.
Well, if you do nothing, it's annoying, but we gotta challenge the pawn chain.
Challenge the pawns, and the best way is B3.
Yeah, B3 is typical, so it's like, if they've already developed these pieces, they would have their rook be defended. But in general, for both colors, when they start advancing the C-pawn like this, it just doesn't work.
B5, and you hit an A4. They try to protect it. If they take, you're happy.
Yeah, because you have the rook and the easy development and the feet of the point, but here it's like A4 and attack.
If they B5, you attack them on the base again. Right, and then they can't protect. They actually can't protect.
So we just start
A4, and they try to protect with A6. It's too late because and if they take A4, right? If the pawn takes A4, we don't take A4. We take C4. Because then he's gonna lose all those pawns.
We have a free center now.
We can take one.
We can take here, we can just take here and ignore the pawn. It's just too easy for develop. The center is crushing. So black can't do this. These early sidelines aren't really...
And we can even add that the pawns on dark, the pieces again flowing on light.
Oh yeah, that's true. Let's look at that.
Pieces flowing on light again. We're seeing that in the Queen F3. We missed Queen F3.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Queen F3. Queen F3 is again on light. It's a little trap, but again, all these ideas, one solid on dark, when you're able to express, when you have a solid inner Dadacha, you're able to express on light, And that's humble start, but with ideas.
With aspiration.
Exactly, paving the way for aspiration and light, and that's again, it comes, it creeps up, and it hits quick. It's a lot harder than one would expect.
So E3, let's look at a couple other sidelines real quick.
Knight C6, so that's the idea of Knight C6 is to
Play E5.
E5, and again, if he gets E5,
Then he's fine.
there's no Stonewall. He's fine or better.
Yeah,
Let's be honest, fine or better. It's not a good thing.
we don't get compensation for our restricted bishop, we don't get our structures. This is bad. We get, like, so we're like, are we playing knight F3 or are we playing F4? Well, I don't like F4 here, because we've already committed to weakening these squares. Well, first of all, they even have the symmetrical Stonewall. But let's not even talk about that right now. They have bishop F5, they have knight F6. They just clamp on light. It's like, so we're on these dark squares to eventually fight for light, but they beat us to the bang. I mean, well, what are we doing here? This doesn't make much sense anymore. So we're going with knight F3, and in queen pawn openings, knight C6 is usually misplaced and it blocks the C pawn. And so white will be a bit better here. He's going to play C4, knight C3, queen B3, target the G5 pawn. Black is able to meet C4 with C6.
Yeah, C4 will be
Something like this, bishop G4. We can even play like...
We're veering a little from the Stonewall.
It can be, you can play this first, you can play C4, you can win the bishop pair first, you can play bishop B5. But the general idea is this knight is somewhat misplaced and our natural move should be good enough for some advantage.
Yeah, so when they play this move, we might switch a little bit and play a normal queen pawn game. But his knight of C6 is misplaced.
Right.
We could play F4. There are some issues, some good, some bad, and I would say the student could try both. I actually really think try both. Like, there's no problem. Again, if we're gonna really ask what to do, maybe we lean towards knight F3.
So the idea with these other systems is the Stonewall is good as a pawn structure. It's as a system, while you have your typical ideas, you can be pretty comfortable there. But in some situations, especially when they're getting really early control of the white squares, objectively will be slightly worse. I mean, if you're comfortable with that because you know the ideas well, or you're like a club player or playing fast chess, by all means. But we want to be honest about this and say, in these few move orders, don't play the Stonewall unless you're okay with that. Here's what you do instead, and avoiding, other than that, this is a good setup.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is knight C6 is the oldest thing that they say, don't, in the queen pawn, you don't play knight C6 if you're black. You don't block the C pawn. If black is willing to do that, I'm okay with switching a little bit and playing this, and I think white has a
it's kind of interesting. I was remembering this. There was this in Nimzovic's, I think it was my system or chess practice. He was like experimenting with this, and after knight C6, he annotated D4 as exclamation. It's like
even as his course of a tempo. Yeah.
It's like knight C6 is misplaced in queen pawn opening. Now this is interesting because they're trying the job of the London now with D4, D5, like knight C3, knight F6, bishop F4. But this is positionally substandard. It's only like white has an extra tempo and he's trying to use it dynamically. I've looked at these lines. Not only does black equalize earlier than normal if he plays it well, positionally speaking, it's dynamic compensation for positional issues.
Has something to do.
It's restricted here, and in the meantime, you can't do the usual plans of C4, queen B3 to target the D5 pawn. You better hope for some other compensation that isn't positional, because positionally it's just not doing well here.
So yeah, and that's the line where white can play solid and eventually play C4 with a good game.
That's right. So let's look at E3, bishop F5. This is potentially interfering, so we sort of have two options here. One of them is, when they play the London style, we can sort of say you weaken the B7 pawn. And I kind of like C4 with queen B3.
Bishop F5 is building on light squares. So it's both building on light squares and weakening light squares. So it's building on this diagonal, it's neglecting light on the queen side. So when that happens, we're going to B7 particularly, we want to circle the B7 square.
Right, just like
B7 is going to be weakness. And that's something we can try to take advantage of with C4 and queen B3 and maybe pounds.
And yeah, this is a really typical setup, and we're going to be a little bit better as white here.
It's hard for black, because if let's say you have queen C8, if he plays queen C8,
the G5 pawn would draw.
Queen C8, we take, and then queen takes pawn, and that's nice, you know, it's actually quite on light. The energy of the pieces on light, pawns on dark, pieces expressing themselves on light, so that's
and And this idea of targeting queenside pawns with early bishop moves is typical. Just to show this for black, it's like, let's say, d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop f4. Well, now white suddenly needs to be accurate. Like here, he's not even supposed to play c3, he has to play knight d2 and go for, well, I'm not going to get into how white can equalize in the London system if he knows unlimited theory right now. But after c3, queen b6, black is already objectively better, and is fighting for the initiative and his face advantage. I did hear it said on the quality chess blog, someone asked, I think it was Andrew Martin, I think his name was, like, why don't you recommend, why don't you make an opening book on the quality chess, on the London system? And they're like, well, we only want to recommend good openings, but if you want to learn how to equalize as white, I think there's 2 books by New in Chess on how to equalize in London. Okay, yeah, I can't spoil that, I play the London sometimes. Okay, but okay, let's go.
Okay, so again, so let's see, bishop f5, there's 2 ways to play.
c4 is the anti-London way.
And again, let's see maybe 1 or 2 lines here, c4, what they play like.
Yeah, we've looked at this a little bit, so, like,
if they play b6, I mean, if they play b6, weakens, well, hold on, b6 weakens some squares.
This bishop we should
and it weakens the white squares a little bit, and again, is it a huge advantage? No, but it's white's having a good time here.
It's just a little more comfortable for
and yeah, it's not the move that black wants to play, b6. And the c7 pawn could become a backwards pawn in an open file, which is somewhat of an issue. Okay, so white's happy enough.
Just a little bit better in easy play. So, they could get concrete with this, but then like
knight c6 is a tricky line, the Baltic, I think. And I've got this a lot, and then if you take b7, you can't do that because it's a blunder if we show that queen takes is knight b4. It doesn't work. When you could get trapped, the queen's almost trapped.
So, and there's like ideas like a6 and rook b8 or something.
Yeah, it's trapped. It's too risky.
Let's not do that. Let's either play bishop d2 to control the d4 square, or a3, and white's still a bit better. But
I recommend bishop d2. Bishop d2 to stop knight b4 and stop knight a5.
Yeah, it's so similar to some lines we're recommending in the Carol concourse. Yeah, you are really thematic with this, but let's not get too distracted with that.
So knight to bishop d2, yeah, bishop.
We don't need to go further, we still have a little more comfortable play, especially because there's a simple alternative. Like c4 is like, I'm trying to make this complicated, I like my London system ideas, but didn't you tell me that you prefer the simple bishop d3?
Sometimes. I mean, well, I don't know. I would say it's instructive. It's really instructive to play this style, to get used to it, to get the colors. I would say the student that wants to, play the best move is c4, but you'll learn the most from this. So play both. Because bishop takes, pawn takes, and it's again, the pawn's acting as a tiny mini bishop. And you'll never play e4. I think it's really, no, you don't play f4 even. I wouldn't even recommend f4. I mean, f4 can be played. It's really, I actually think in this case, you're not attacking him, you're not hating him. You just play knight f3, castle, queen, bishop d2, maybe, rook c1, queen will probably stay on light, and to act as kind of a light square bishop. If a dark bishop, the queen will probably tinkle around and act as a light energy. You don't play e4, I think that's worthwhile mentioning. You will not play e4.
And we can
your hours away.
We can your d4 pawn.
Yeah, let's take the other hours away and then we show e4.
Let's not.
Yeah, not play e4 because it weakens the d pawn. You don't need e4. It's not gonna. Yeah, leave it as is. d3 is humble, but sufficient and pure. It is a certain light, and you don't even play f4. You don't need more pawns on dark.
If you did that, the whole point of that would be to eventually get a light attack, but you've already traded your lights for bishop. So it's like a positional game.
It's very easy to get like, oh, that's the boom. It's not it. That's not it. You don't have a bishop. Be flexible with it. Enjoy. See what happens. Try to treat it as like a canvas for ideas.
Yeah, Yakov would be always telling me like a couple years ago, it's like, Elijah, you don't need to be doing things all the time. You don't need to be trying to crush your opponents. Sometimes you can just do nothing.
Nothing. Knight f3 and let's see what's after.
And if you draw, that's okay. Yeah, you can draw. Sure, why not? And then, and I mean, I was like, well, how do I do that? But then I started getting better results, and I had my first international master win over the board after I started doing nothing. Actually, that game I was accidentally half an hour late, so I was forced to do nothing because if I went for my usual complicated stuff, I would have blundered something. So, apparently...
Yeah, interesting. I mean, let's see a few moves here. Knight f3, I think it's worthwhile seeing a few. Knight f6, knight f3, e6, castle. Let's say they try to c5, and then we can actually play like, there's a cool line to play is b3, knight c6, bishop y2, and then he takes, pawn takes, knight takes knight, bishop takes, bishop maybe d6 or something, knight d2, and then knight f3, and then it's kind of cool lines, and maybe the queen comes to c1, and then b2, I kind of like c1 to b2, and that's how we have a good squeeze on a long diagonal, and our d3 pawn will stay on d3, act as a little light, and b3, which is a2, b3 are also little light energies.
Yes.
It's a nice pure structure, and slow and nice, comfortable. We don't play e4, no need. It's good as it is. D3 is good enough.
Light brick. I just have a question though. So this setup though, controlling for dark spurs makes a lot of sense, especially because we have this light brick and we're gonna get an outpost. I'm just sort of wondering, do we want to maybe play f4 first, or what are you guys
It's a great question. I would lean towards being overkill. My instinct is overkill, and I think both are fine, but you don't need the hassle. You don't need it, because then if he gets e5, it's too annoying.
Yeah, like there's a backwards pawn now.
That's nothing. Let him play e5 and it hurts his center, blocks his bishop.
I didn't know that.
I think especially for the students to kind of realize, let them do the work. Let them do the work.
Yeah, that's not natural for me, but now that I think about it, maybe let's say something like correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe e4 here.
Yeah, let him push.
And then we have like maybe knight c4 coming in.
Knight c4,
And then maybe our bishop's gonna be a little more buzzing. We can play bishop a3. Then
c1 and f4.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah. We have that counter attack, and maybe f5's coming at some point.
The pawns suddenly become mini bishop.
It's true. We have better color harmony, and the pawns in the center are restricting their bishop.
Some ideas, some thoughts.
Well, it's a slow positional game. You sort of have to enjoy the little things and be okay with just playing the position instead of just trying to win right now. If you want to crush your opponents, well, maybe c4 or b3 is a little bit more forcing. Very interesting. Okay, so instead of bishop f5, let's say at c6, maybe black remains flexible.
Yeah, back to normal line. This is c6, bishop d3, dual standards.
He's just staying flexible with his knight. He's like, you want to play your Stonewall? Alright, I'm playing the Stonewall. And then we're all blocked up in the...
Yeah, it's good to know that whenever they delay knight f6, again, this is a psychology also as well. Like, it often means they might, if you play f4, they're like, oh, I play f5 too. Like, it's a very standard reaction that you don't need to give people easy time to play hard, annoying moves. Don't give them... If they play f5, they'll deal with it, but don't encourage them to play challenging moves. So the way to not encourage, I think this is... Again, this is not intuitive, it's sort of from endless games you see what helps people find moves and what doesn't. You don't play f4 too early, let them play knight f6 and then play f4. Here, people play f5, the Dutch players may play f5, but you're not kind of scaring them yet, so there's no reason to be scared. They'll play knight f6 most of the time.
Right, if we play knight d2, we're flexible. If they commit to a Stonewall, then we've already overprotected the e4 square and we're doing good. Let's say they play knight f6. f4, well, we're doing great now. We have our better than usual setup even, because c6 is probably just a waste of time.
It's a bit passive, c6 is a bit passive.
But the other idea is that if they just play more waiting moves, we have better development than they do, and we get to play e4, and we're first and second.
Yeah, this is actually really interesting, right? This is very, it's very nuanced. This is not standard. It's actually, I think, worth mentioning. e4 is very, very non-standard to play this early. It's due to this exact move order. Nothing more, nothing less.
If black is extremely flexible, he does so at the cost of development. We have the first tempo, we can use it to be flexible with development, and so, we're going to be first if it's just a flexibility battle, but we don't want this symmetrical Stonewall.
Black hasn't done anything, so it's almost like, yeah, at this point, if you play f4, play f5, and he's kind of waiting cagey, and you say, you know what, you've lost so many tempi, I'll just play normally, even if it means we waste a tempo. Look at his tempo, he has like 5 random moves. Same with bishop d6.
But it's the same idea. They just lost time. Their setup only makes sense if we commit to an early Stonewall, whereas our moves make sense even if we don't.
Yeah, so occasionally, again, I think it's worth noting that e4 is rare. It's very specific. We only want to do bad moves. But other than that, you can probably not choose this sort of move.
Yeah, that's right. Especially because our Stonewall Attack middle game setup is what we're aiming for. It's very strong. So
e4 push is a huge highlight of the Stonewall playing correctly. but not usually considering that.
You had to give him 10 or something. So 15. So C6 is not challenging. But if they play F5, actually, there's something interesting about this because, well, we don't play F4, so what are we doing? Well, maybe we develop it. And then their whole point was they get to control the E4 square, but we always have F3. And we have a lead in development, we're developing super easily. There's a lot of pawn breaks in the air, like C4 could happen at any moment. F3, E4. Sure, who knows, maybe even G4, like I'm talking about.
F3, maybe E4 at some point, maybe G4, maybe C4.
They just have better development, and just positionally speaking, this is their better bishop. Controls the sweet square, but restricted, so if you can exchange it.
Maybe trade the dark square bishops at some point.
We're usually concerned about, like, let's imagine that, like, they play this, and we've already played, like, let's say b3, bishop b2, queen c1, and bishop a3, and they've played bishop b6. Well, this is very similar to the bishop f5 lines, where they put their bishop here and they take kings, right? Well, we recapture with the pawn to control the light squares. Well, if they try to control the dark squares, they've already played c6.
Yeah, basically when they trade bishops, there's no way for them to make a mini bishop. They have no pawns on bishop on dark, and they have no pawns on dark. So it's gonna be a nice transition, even Blitz to an endgame.
Sure, I mean, it's just good. The Stonewall is, so they play the Stonewall, but they do it under the worst of circumstances, and they're also behind in development, so they didn't get what they wanted, and we did. So, C6 is a flexible setup, it's not too challenging. So E3, play F6, bishop D3, C5, oh, we'll get to that. Knight C6.
Yeah, knight c6 is, again, looking to play e5. We have to alarm bells. And one thing, if you want to do one thing, and only one thing right in the Stonewall is, do not allow e5. It's very easy to get all fancy and developing and then you have e5. Nothing is relevant. If we allow e5, it will almost always works.
Better to allow 94 than to allow e5.
That's a fair way to put it. That's a fair way, but 94 is often very dubious and unclear, but allowing e5 is just
so... Don't ever allow it.
Unless in the cheesecake.
Oh yes, please play e5 in the cheesecake.
Please play e5.
Yes, please play e5.
We're kind of jumping, but a little bit. In the cheesecake, e5 has its own thing. They get it, and they get it on. We're happy when they get it. Versus the Stonewall, they're not supposed to get it. If they get it, we did something.
I can almost taste the cheesecake now.
The cherry cheesecake.
We don't have the cherry cheesecake handy, but at least we got the blueberries handy, you know? Okay, so...
Therefore, clamping down, and this is I think, a known theoretical line of quote-unquote refutations. This is a supposed refutation. It's not, of course, it's so we're done, but it's an idea for black. So black plays here to threat knight c6.
He needs something concrete. I mean, if he doesn't, then we'll just get our usual ideas. C3 to prevent knight b4, knight d2 to prevent knight e4, and then we develop our pieces as we usually do. Knight comes c5, and so forth.
So what's the next move they play knight boy for?
Yeah, this is the critical try, but let's say they do this. Well,
knight b4 trying to win the bishop. So again, we're not super happy to give up the bishop, but at the same time, we're not super sad.
We have a light rebuilder.
Because d3 take with the pawn, and the d3 pawn becomes a light rebuild.
And all our pieces can develop. We can castle kingside, maybe b3, bishop a3, maybe bishop d2, knight c3, rook c1.
So again, we're just an arrow.
Sure.
In the castle, we're gonna play maybe b3 and bishop coming out.
Sure, and then
coming to c1.
This is possibly weakness, and in the long run, maybe we could consider, like, against the structure, like, sometimes there's minority attack ideas to create a backward c-pawn. The c5 square is possibly unique, but in any case, it's a positional game. Black has a light square bishop, it's kind of hard to find an active square for it. We are having not a great bishop, but we could exchange it if we need to.
That's not b2. I love that they play c5, and we're happy to take.
Yeah, it's like our bishop is great, but how are they going to activate their pieces? They don't have a lot of pawn breaks. And then we have this long diagonal. Are we better? Well, I don't know. Are we worse? Probably not. I mean,
I think white's a little
slightly better, maybe.
White's a little comfortable. And another thing is worth mentioning, though, you never play e4. Almost never. Like, that's actually really it's intuitive to play e4 often. Like, you show me the e4 push, and that's something we would try to avoid. We would not play because that would
open their bishops.
Weaken the d4 pawn. Actually, our d4 becomes sterile. Like, it's not healthy.
like maybe bishop g4 takes, and then
No, she won't take. They'll just play. If we play ever e4, they wait, they ignore it.
at some point takes might be strong.
Maybe, but it doesn't. Our d4 is just too loose. Our d4.
That's like the weakness of double pawns, right? So if our pawn was on c3, then it would protect the pawn, but now it's not. So the reason this is the weak pawn, and it's
Keep it as is. A d3
artificially isolated.
But good. Humble but secure.
Maybe this at some point, who knows? But yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's say knight e4 instead. Well now,
It's not jumping.
but that knight's a bit loose now. So
e4 is jumping into our hole, and he kind of maneuvered it in such a way that he got there in time. He got there before we played knight David 2, but he's a little bit behind development. So we're gonna try and punish him for that. Okay.
yeah, we have like knight c3, maybe queen b3 ideas, take c5, knight's getting undermined.
And again, c4 largely in one. It's very important to kind of conceptualize it. Knight e4 is trying to pounce on white. C4 is trying to say, hey, you can't have white too, and fighting back. The pieces are coming in quickly.
Right. So let's say they play like bishop g4 instead on move 4. Then after knight f3, it's kind of a normal Stonewall. I'm not, the knight's maybe not great here.
Not great. It's not great.
I'm not particularly happy that they have this, but we can recapture this
Always
way.
happy with the pawn, yeah, always. I would say leave the c pawn back for a little bit here. Maybe leave it back, depending.
Maybe we play
Maybe, again, it's worth tinkering with these things, but sometimes, if you feel they're gonna try to trade bishops, leave the pawn there for a little bit. Worthwhile. Alright, see.
I don't know, there's lots of ideas here.
And this is good.
I mean, black is certain ways fine, and there's a lot of ideas.
I think it's very good. More than fine.
So actually, I'd like you to explain that because I've seen some similar positions with the Stonewall Dash with reverse colors, and that's considered to be acceptable, but I can't say I'm as familiar with bishop g4 ideas as I am with the main ones. Can you explain Knight's middle game ideas and how it varies with bishop g4 compared to main line?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna actually unpin, like we could play a few moves out here. Let's say castle.
So let's say d6, castles,
bishop David 6 we could play.
Oh, and they don't even have this.
They don't have c5, again, it's very important. We play knight c6, so kind of like, it's not that great. You don't block, again, this is a rule of thumb, there are exceptions, but you don't block the c-pawn in the queen pawn game. You just don't do it. It is no c5. I mean, you need c5 for space. You're going to show maybe that c5, but that's a good way to pressure white center to get space for the black queen. You don't have the coming with disadvantage. And in this case, I would say at this point, I would say c3 to stop maybe. You could play c3. If they play bishop f5, I know it's a little, and you could play queen c2, force the trade. And he takes.
I guess we're threatening to control the.
Yeah, we will. He castles. Yeah, he castles. Okay.
Okay.
Maybe if he plays knight forever. Well, we could. And the knight d2. And then eventually we'll play e4. I mean, there's no space.
95.
What is he gonna do though? Like it's another thing. Yeah.
He's kind of stuck.
He gets no stuck. There's no c5. And again, like Elijah was explaining earlier, e4 is a very good. We don't even play that. I think we just play e4. We don't need anything. We just need e4. E4. Elijah was explaining earlier about the c pawn. The pawn on c5. Black's pawn.
Yeah, that's true. Then they start
for pressuring the center.
Exchange, and d4 pawn goes isolated.
When black is the pawn on c5, it's keeping us honest. When the pawn is the pawn on c5, invariably e4 will be a big move. That's very important. That e4 push was something that years into me playing, I started realizing the importance, and more years went, I started more and more realizing, and I realized that that's the key to playing it well, to understanding of the Stonewall, is e4. E4 put, e4 square, e4 push, and white as a whole. And I think this is a position which looks like black is okay, and I believe white's very, very happy here. Like a move, let's say queen e7, let's try to queen e7, and then yeah, you'd like to play e4 right away. You can't because he takes an f4. You can show that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, even here, I'm kind of wondering, like,
that's too much. I think it's too much. So you don't want to give that 4 point, but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, maybe it's okay to try to stack, but I think your position's good enough. 95 followed by e4, and we're pretty happy.
There's some threats.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see if he plays rook David 8. Then e4 is actually a threat. If he takes, we're happy, but if he doesn't take, we're going to
Yeah, we have some space advantage
And
here.
the queen, again, the queen acts as
A second light, light bishop. Yeah, we get to
and it's a
rebuild.
very, I've had this a lot of times, and it's very easy for white to get crushing position, like real crushing. If there's no counterplay on the center on d4, you could just extend that lead.
Like, this
Yeah,
is
c5, you need this black. If you don't have it, you're in rough shape, and it's subtle. You start really, what's going wrong? It's going wrong. You didn't play the pawn c5. You didn't do your share. Black has to do his share. Black tries to get an unfair, a quick knight c6 comes with a price, and then you have to play very quiet and get a position, which is an advantage. Queen g4. I mean, what does he even play here? Let's say he plays h6. I don't know, h6. Queen g4, threatening bishop takes h6. Queen king h7.
Wow, hold on. I was just wondering, like, this is dangerous, so dangerous that I'm already, like, trying to calculate ridiculous things like this.
Yeah, I mean, pawn takes is okay.
And then I'm like, rook f6,
Might be, yeah, even this
rook
is good.
f1,
Yeah, even this is probably
boom. I don't even,
maybe. You don't even need this, but you have a lot of double the rooks.
it just shows how easy it is. I mean, white doesn't need to do that, obviously. You can just move, like, black has no moves.
Yeah, it's very rough. Even the knight on c6
I mean,
kind of spiral.
would you even have time for, like, this?
Absolutely. But notice, I think it's fair to say, and there are exceptions, but the queen will almost, the whole game may go, the queen only steps on white. The whole game. And that's pretty standard. And again, we have a golden bishop. We talked about a golden bishop before, an unopposed bishop.
Targeting the dark squares over there.
But the queen will be the second bishop. And again, it's a good rule. Capablanca, that's his idea. If you have one bishop, the queen will probably want to be placed on the second color to act as a second bishop harmony. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, going back, there's like e6 instead of bishop g4, but then we're here, but
It's fine. I would say
knight g2 felt like more in line with what you were telling me, right?
Let's keep the knight g2 here.
Yeah, knight g2 makes sense because then we prevent knight d4. Our next move is probably actually c3, right?
Yeah, stop
To prevent knight d4. Now, we can allow these ideas, we're still fine, but we want to not let them get any funky business, then we get to have our usual play. I mean, so there's lots of ways to play, of course, but we feel like, why calculate the opponent's counterplay when you can just prevent their counterplay and then you're the only one who's playing? Okay, so let's look at e6 on move 3, bishop e3, e6, knight d2.
Knight d2 replenishing white. Before playing f4 in a perfect setting, and again, this is a perfect setting, we don't have to play f4 yet. We have a chance to secure e4. When we then play f4, that's going to be the way. It's very easy to get wrapped up in this, again, miss f4 when you need to play f4, and that's not good. Again, you have to stop e5. They can't play e5. They play e5 to take, right? e5 take, no problem. You're looking for e-pawn.
Yeah.
So then you have a chance to go knight d2. Alright.
c5, c3, c4. We've already looked at this sort of thing. It's just the same. There's lots of different move orders. It's all the same.
Yeah, we could kind of go through this with bishop here.
It's all the same.
3.
There's so many different move orders, but as long as you understand the structures, you're doing well.
Yeah, it's same. And again, c4 usually is pretty happy to see because it means he's losing the pressure. Whenever they play c4, that's a good sign that my d4 is very secure. I can probably play e4. I can see a couple more moves here. Knight e5. Let's say b5, knight e5. Bishop a7, and probably, wait, do we have e4? I don't know if we have.
We could, but why?
Why? We
It's
don't
like the problem.
we don't need it.
They were calculated.
Exactly. Queen f3 is like, while for d4 is good, queen f3 though I think it's even better.
I mean, I prefer checkmating when I don't have to calculate variations.
Yeah, it's good. I will say, the problem with e4 is, if we just show e4 back, we have to look at the piece, just this arrow. His bishop opens up.
Why give him his counterplay? Why
counterplay? If you go back and move, he plays bishop d7 instead of bishop d. Then actually e4 is very, very high. Like I will, because well, if we just first of all e4 if he takes, let's see if he takes, knight takes, take.
This is looking pretty scary for black.
Really, really scary. And then again, if he takes our knight, let's say he takes our knight list.
Oh well, he can't even take it.
with his bishop.
Oh, well then we think of the F pawn
And then the
first.
dark bishop is a hero. So.
Oh, fantastic, and there's already ideas like queen h5, g6, bishop takes h6, not to mention the
pieces
rook
open
left.
up. The pieces open up. Again, that's kind of we saw last variation. But if we go back, and then when we play e4, if he doesn't take, if we go back to when we play e4,
Oh, well then we just crush it.
let's say he plays queen c7. Again, this is a really good trap to see. Again, the knight takes, and then e5. It comes up a lot of ways, and you'll have, particularly in Blitz. I mean, 100%. Every student, you promise the first month of playing, I promise you'll have this at least once. My word.
Just play more Blitz.
You gotta play maybe a lot of Blitz. I really know they'll get it soon enough. Like really, it won't take long. It's easy to fall into.
And Yakov was talking
Easily
about,
until master level. Easy.
you want to get better at Blitz, play Bullet. Just kidding. Okay. So,
Probably true too. But E4 is again, there's ideas to get E5 in.
E4 is not necessary, but E4 is more typical when they play C4.
Yeah.
So, okay, so bishop G3, C5, C3, knight C6, F4, it's another one of these move orders. This is probably the critical line. Honestly, if you don't like this line, you can play knight F3 here, it's a calling, white's fine, but let's go stick to the typical
Let's keep
Stonewall
strict on you guys and then stick to program.
Yeah, so it's like some masters are going to complain here because black plays an accurate play and then and controls the white spurs in exactly the right order. And I mean, if I knew my opponent was going to play this position as well, and then he was going to prepare significantly half master level in slow chess, I wouldn't play this way as white. I'd play something else. But I mean, I look at Yakov's database; he's just an equal score against other masters or even better score in this position. This is the critical line. Like the Stonewall cheesecake is working everywhere else. The problem is, before Yakov talks about all white ideas, I do want to have that disclaimer, but also black is going to try to fight for the light spurs, and this is the one line where if he plays well, his light spur control is enough to stop our attack. So, but let's talk about
things that black can do, and yeah.
Alright, but let's talk about white's ideas.
Yeah, castle.
Knight D2,
You show it, castle. Yeah, let's play a castle.
the castles.
Yeah, and then he plays bishop e7.
Oh, that's kind of interesting actually. There's a game here that was played in the 2600 lost last year. I wonder about, so why would he take here? Why would a 26?
Well, just,
I don't understand that. Okay,
but okay, bishop e7,
bishop e7,
knight d2, knight d2, castle.
castles.
And then you don't play h3. I think it's actually a really, really good thing to keep in mind. You don't play h3. The reason why not to play h3, first there's two reasons. You encourage him to go to f5.
Which is what they want.
They want to play f5. In chess, don't encourage players to make good moves. Don't force him to do. Don't encourage them, and definitely don't force him to make good moves. Also, h3 is, again,
It's kind of lost of time.
also often in their variations, we want rook or queen to get h3. Pawn h3 gets in the way. It doesn't help us. So queen e1 is the way to get it.
Queen G3.
No, I mean, mostly 95. Don't think. It's not even this. It's 95.
Yeah, 95's coming.
And that's fine. So queen, let's say queen c7.
Queen C7.
95 is fine.
95.
Yeah, if bishop f5, so be queen e2. If he goes here, you don't take. I think it's important to mention. You do not take the bishop.
They have such a clamp on
The
E4.
reason is, if we play that out, the bishop takes, pawn takes, and it's actually not good because even though we have a double f pawn, the e4 pawn is not, the e4 square is not, he has it, and we have no white bishop, it's not good. So don't take. That's important not to, and instead of queen e2 to replenish.
Kind of also interesting why you like bishop e2 at G4, but that's maybe a bit much.
I think it's a bit much. Queen e2 in this way, if he takes, we take with the queen will act as a light spur.
Light rebuilder, so they didn't actually manage to dominate the E4 spur as they wanted, but so...
And I think, another variation is they play c4. I've had this quite a bit. C4 is really cool because c4 is saying, oh, now you have to take. Bishop takes, bishop, and then he's very happy.
Clamp this down to the white spurs.
He clamps down, but if we have bishop b1, this is kind of nice. And
We're
then,
keeping the tension. We don't want them to play knight e4 and start taking things, and then
e4 doesn't work.
it doesn't work, so it's like they're both fighting for
e4 is
e4.
to lose material, e4 is
C4 is hanging, e4 is weak.
Yeah, if he takes our bishop, we take back with the rook. See that? Take the bishop, take back with the rook, and then that big move, the one single most important move and square of the Stonewall is of course e5, but really e4. E4 will come next. Light, and it's an important. I think that's very, very important for this. You guys to keep that in mind.
Right, so like e4, takes, we freed our bishop.
See now, let's say he plays b5.
e5, e4.
e4, and then again, it's either take or not take.
If we're given time, let's say play some slow move, it's
if he does not take, we play e5 and followed by f5.
And now, we're the ones with the light attack.
If we address what f5 really is, f5 is fighting for light squares and tickling light, and he has to probably take. We take back with the rook. Get our knight involved, get our bishop out, double the rooks in the f-file. Pretty happy here. And again, our queen will probably remain most of the time white to act as a second bishop. Okay, that's if he doesn't take. So if we play e4, if he takes, which I think they usually will.
This is an illustrative variation for show the ideas. It's not checked by the computer.
Bishop takes bishop, go ahead, bishop takes bishop, rook takes, b5, e4, pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes knight, knight takes e4, queen takes, knight takes e5, pawn takes. This is a kind of a really important variation as well, where it looks like normal enough. In fact, white's doing very, very well because we have queen g4. Like, there's a lot of space, and the queen is very happy. And then we can play out a couple more moves, rook to d8, but a to d8.
That seems like a really interesting because I was thinking of bishop e3 and then doubling the rooks in the f-file, but queen g4 is much stronger.
With pressure on an a6 with tempo, yeah. And I think they play like king h8. They have to win. And at this point, it's kind of important. I actually would lean towards trading bishops. No problem, just trade bishops.
Because their bishop is
their bishop is harmonious
with the colors, and ours is not.
Ours is not, and we can trade but be happy to endgame or late middle game where we just pile on. Alechine's gun, if you guys maybe have heard of the concept, we pile on. The two rooks and a queen on f7. The f7 pawn is really weak, and we could also look to attack the h pawn. We could just gang up. We could gang up